Still up at Oxford, but on a completely different water. Welcome to the Journeyman's Tales. So here I am, back up at Oxford, but on a different water. And in a new swim. I have tried to fish here once before, but I spent about 3/4 an hour trying to find some clear spots, but it was incredibly difficult. It was after the weed cutting too, but I couldn't find anything, so I moved off somewhere else. Now, it's normally a fairly busy swim as far as I can tell, but it's free today, so I've come round to give it a go, to try something different. I did led around for about half an hour and found what I feel is a reasonably clean spot. There might be some low-lying silkweed out there, but there's none of the Elodia that I'm surrounded by. And I did put like last time, put the deeper over the top of it just to check that I was getting the right information from the lead. And yeah, that's it. So it's over a small weed bed and in front of another weed bed, but it's not the eelgrass that I was fishing across and through last time. This is what I can feel more like Canadian pondweed, Elodia. So yeah, managed to sort all that out, got the 3 rods out, put all the camp together, and then realised that I'd left my medication in the van. So I had to bring the rods in, go back to the van, get what I needed to survive out in the open air, and redo the rods. But I rewrapped the first rod, the right-hand rod, which is the first one going out, and I was about to cast it, and I was just checking that the line wasn't snagged around the tip ring, and I noticed there was a couple of nicks in it. Now, normally when I'm wrapping up, I use 2 hands, so the line is always going through my index finger and thumb on my right hand, and normally you can pick up stuff, but I obviously missed it. So I had to remove a wrap and a half to get rid of that nick. So maybe the leaving the medication in the van was a bit of an omen, really. Anyway, the 3 rods went back out. They went out quite nicely, actually. And yeah, I've had a message from one of the boys fishing opposite me. He said it's a bit sticky at the moment, but I've got to mix it up a bit. Got to try different waters whilst I can. Mind you, this is about the length of my walking distance, really. I was absolutely banjaxed by the time I sorted it all out. But we're all in now. We're settled. Going to finish this cup of coffee, make some spare rigs up, and then make something to eat. But the rigs and the bait exactly the same as on the last trip, and I'm going to leave them exactly as they are now for the night and reassess things in the morning. But it's lovely and warm, but the barometer's quite high, but it's due to be dropping over the next couple of days with the possible threat of rain. But there's a very light southwesterly when it is blowing, coming in this direction slightly, but it feels good to me. Mrs. Duck having a nice feed on a premature spom opening. She can just get on with it quietly and eat it all up. Rather she had it than those rather vicious swans when they're coming in with their little signet causing havoc. Well, now the sun's disappearing behind the trees, the heat has gone right out of the day. It's quite nippy now, but I've just put out another half dozen spoms over the area, and the only thing I've seen in a positive vein was a big fish came out right in close off to my left, on the other side of the reeds, totally out of anywhere I can get to, really. But other than that, it's relatively quiet. There's a few small things moving around, but nothing positive. I certainly haven't heard anything in the bay to my right, but we will see. The wind is staying quite light at the moment, fortunately, because there's a real nip to it. But yeah, you never know, do you? And with the remaining warmth of the day, all the midges are coming in, so it's straight on with the thermocell. Well, unfortunately, that was a very quiet night, apart from the odd coot pulling the line more than anything else. I don't think anything was overly diving on the spot, but I think they were catching the line again in the weed bed that I'm fishing over. The wind has picked up a bit more now this morning and has swung round a bit, so it's blowing straight in the bivvy. So if the rains come, it's going to make it incredibly pleasant, but there we are. I did have a tench first thing this morning before I managed to get the main camera set up, and I have to confess that was on a worm. At first light I changed the left-hand rod from a pop-up onto a worm rig. I didn't really want to do that, but it's a surefire way of finding out whether there's actually anything moving through the swim and whether the baits are accessible. I think they are. They feel fine, you know, when you first pick the lead up, you're not getting any resistance, and then you're pulling it into weed. So I'm convinced the area I'm sitting on is good. And having had the tench, so obviously there are some fish moving through. Okay, it's tench, but there's fish moving through. But yeah, I don't particularly want to fish worms, particularly, because it's messy, to say the very least. But I have put another worm rig out on the left-hand rod, but I have changed the rig slightly. I'll go into that later on. this wind is quite refreshing. It should get them moving around. There's been a few boshing out right on the far side. One right in the middle of open water this morning. So there's a little bit of activity going on. And if they do follow this wind, they should come across my baited area. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. Well, it's slowly heading towards midday and the wind is really picking up now. If it's not a new wind, it's certainly a hell of a lot fresher than it has been. And the fish should be moving with it, I hope. So I've just put out another half dozen spoms. I've redone the rods. It's due to start tipping down with rain in a couple of hours' time, which is why I've done it now. And just as I've sat down here, one has boshed out a few yards past the spaded spot. Guy opposite has just had one. A couple have shown beyond my spot, but slightly closer than they have been. So maybe this wind is beginning to inspire them to feed and move them in this direction. I mean, technically everything should be perfect. I'm fishing into the nice, strong, relatively warmish for June, a cold June. It should be bingo time. We'll see. So just got a bit of old land in it, made into a bag. Makes a great little sieve for the worms. Rock them around for a few seconds. Straight into the bucket. Job's a good one. All you got to do is chop them up then. Well, it's now mid-afternoon. The forecast rain has finally arrived, and with the rain coming, the wind has actually dropped down a bit for the moment, but we've forced us inside the bivvy. Fortunately, as in the past, the window is allowing a bit of light to come in, and you don't feel so boxed in, really. Anyway, I've been putting the worm in the mix on this particular session for the first time for a while now. I did it in the Blackthorn Pines for the first time and actually tried using a worm rig, using the band method, and then I redid it again last summer, fishing the kebab rig, using that, and I thought that was a much better deal, but I thought I'd try and revisit the band method. Now, what we've got is a band fitted to a micro ring swivel and a bit of corn put over the top, and then the band. Now what I've invested in is one of these little medieval torture numbers, and you push the band over the end of it, and then you can expand the band rather nicely, which allows you to pop the worms inside there. Once you've got as many worms in as you want, you can release the band, pull it off. Now trap the worms, and then you push the piece of corn up so you makes the rubber band very small and compresses it on the worms. Great. Still a bit fiddly, but the worms stay there. They're moving objects, which always makes it difficult. But I think last time I referred to it as herding cats. It's a little bit better this time. But so out that went. Now, I'm blaming the wind, but the cast was slightly out, wasn't good enough, so I brought it back in to redo it, and half the worms had disappeared. Now, if that had been spot on, I wouldn't have brought it back out and I wouldn't have known that half the worms had disappeared. I'd have either had a run on it or nothing at all. If I'd have brought it in with nothing at all on it, I'd have said that maybe small stuff has been attacking it and removing it. So I did it again, tightened it up even more to the point where I thought, well, if I push it any more, I'm going to start cutting the worms in half. I cast it out deliberately to one side of the swim, let it hit the water and immediately brought it back in, and again some of the worms were missing. So that's been totally abandoned, and I've gone back to the old kebab rig, which is what I was using last summer. So again, you've got a micro ring swivel, bit of corn put on it, and you've got a bit of braid, and then you've got one of these kebab stops on the end there that call themselves. But with this method, you're actually pushing that through the worms, so you're impaling the worms on to the braided area. And again, you can push the corn up if you want to compress them up to a tighter ball or not. But the worms don't come off on that. Once they're on there, they're on there, basically, especially the bigger ones. So that's what caught the tench earlier on. I did put it back out again, and it had an aborted run on it, and then I did bring back a tench scale on the hook actually. But I've taken it off now. I've gone back out there with a pink pop-up for the evening session. So I'm not a great fan of the band. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our 2-night trip. It seems to have gone fairly quickly, apart from in the middle of last night when I was bivvy bound. The rain was hammering down, but other than that, time has flown by. We seem to have got the barometer right, which was falling nicely. Nice, relatively warm southwesterly coming in. There were some fish showing eventually in the area. The tench were managing to find the bait, but unfortunately the carp didn't move on to the area, so a blank technically. Anyway, I shall be out again in the not too distant future, I hope. Thanks for your company on this Journeyman's Tales, and I'll catch you all again soon. Cheers for now.